In 1998, Nintendo revitalized the highly successful Game Boy with the new Game Boy Color. Gone were the monochromatic colors, and now gamers were treated to a vibrant coat of paint to their games. On Christmas of 1999, I remember asking for a Game Boy Color as it was at a time when Pokemon was all the rage for me, and I got my Kiwi Color Game Boy Color console that day, alongside Pokemon Yellow and Conker's Pocket Tales. Countless hours were spent playing this superb handheld with so many awesome games. In this episode, I want to share my personal top 10 Game Boy Color games. Now, these include only games that took advantage of the Game Boy Color hardware, so any black cartridge and clear cartridge games are in play here. Original Game Boy games, the ones in the gray cartridges and don't have the native color scheming, are not included here, as that's another video I plan to cover. Thanks to the Game Boy player on the GameCube, I feel like this is a fair way to still relate it to the GameCube aspect of the channel, since all the games shown here are captured through that. So, without further ado, let's dive into this top 10. Number 10, Resident Evil Gaiden. Kicking things off is a game that many critics trashed back in the day, which is Resident Evil Gaiden. This exclusive installment had us venturing the Starlight cruise ship searching for Leon S. Kennedy as he had gone missing on this ship, and Barry Burton is sent in to find his whereabouts. In the process, a new character named Lucia was introduced and had a mysterious power to detect BOWs. The adventure has you playing as 3 characters in a top-down perspective while searching every room on the ship for keys and items to allow you to further progress. However, the combat is what's handled very unique here, in which when you aim towards an enemy or get grabbed by an enemy, the game will enter a first-person mode in which a marker will go back and forth quickly and goes faster depending on the weapon equipped. Enemies will approach over time, so making these shots count are essential to survival. Much like the original Resident Evil games, ammo and health are scarce, so don't expect to go around taking out every enemy because the game still has that survival horror aspect. While the game is far from perfect, I actually really like this transition for Resident Evil to the 8-bit handheld, and it fits well. The story is engaging, the music fits very well, and the gameplay works surprisingly well. While there was a GBC port of the PS1 original almost complete that did look stunning visually, Capcom did cancel that as it was near completion. I do still wish that version released officially and was completed, but I will say, I still loved Resident Evil Gaiden so much that I replayed the game numerous times, and all 3 save files are up to the finale of the game. A unique Resident Evil experience that always will hold a special spot near and dear to me for the Game Boy Color. Number 9, Conker's Pocket Tales. Now, many are very well aware of Conker's Bad Fur Day on the N64, as well as his appearance in Diddy Kong Racing. But did you know that he had his own standalone game prior for the Game Boy Color called Conker's Pocket Tales? This top-down adventure is nowhere near the hilarious, over-the-top humor of the N64 Mature Classic, but instead is about Conker when he was much younger. The evil acorn has ruined Conker's birthday party and stolen his future girlfriend Barry alongside all of Conker's birthday presents. Throughout the vast adventure, Conker must find the 8 hidden presents scattered across each of the various locales. The game does a great job of incorporating different gameplay elements as well. There are some block puzzles and switch puzzles to help advance through areas, as well as mini games to change it up. I will say though, do not let the appearance fool you. Conker's Pocket Tales is a very challenging game, and you will see the game over screen quite often. This was one of the first games I got with my Game Boy Color, and I really love the premise of it. It definitely has the elements of a rare game, and it's one that is still an engaging experience despite its unforgiving difficulty. Number 8. Game & Watch Gallery 2. Back in the day, Nintendo released these handheld devices called Game & Watch, which were simple point-based games to play on the go. We actually have a Donkey Kong one that was my father's, and always thought it was awesome to play back then. I played the first Game & Watch Gallery at a friend's house back in the day, and really enjoyed the premise behind taking these classic releases and having both the original versions and modernized versions of them. The sequel released as a Game Boy Color release, and the games on here are a blast. You have Parachute, Helmet, Chef, Vermin, Donkey Kong, and an unlockable game, Ball. Every game brought here has an awesome modernization appearance to them and takes full advantage of the Mario-themed aesthetics. Controls are as responsive and simple as it gets, but there's a really addictive nature to actually beating your high score every run. Each game starts at a slow speed, and the higher the score gets, the faster the game gets. You reach 100 points, and then the game slows down a bit and continues to gradually speed up again and multiply the number of objects on screen. Every 200 points, you'll get an extra life. I've spent countless hours replaying this game back in the day and always trying to get 1000 points in each game. Additionally, there's even a library section to check out the history of the games provided here and listen to the catchy music as well. There are several Game & Watch Gallery installments out there, but this one is easily my favorite, simply for Donkey Kong alone. Number 7. Wario Land 3. Wario received quite the limelight in having his own game series called Wario Land. While the first game played a little bit more like a traditional platformer, the sequels that spawned are much more unique affairs. Between Wario Land 2 and 3, Wario Land 3 is the one that truly stood out the most for me. Being crafted exclusively for the Game Boy Color, Wario Land 3 has you venturing through a variety of levels trying to find all the hidden keys. Wario has no health bar to worry about, but instead the game follows much of the formula of Wario Land 2. Wario can take a serious beating in this game, but what makes it unique is that Wario can transform into different forms depending on the effect from an enemy. This could range from a donut being thrown at him that makes him obese and can break certain blocks, to becoming a zombie and able to fall through platforms, to getting flattened and clearing narrow pathways that can't be reached otherwise. And this is only a fraction of the transformations that Wario can become. The game utilizes a day and night cycle system that also drastically changes each level on how to progress through the game. There's even this fun golf minigame that I always enjoyed quite a bit, and I'm surprised that Mario Golf never utilized Wario's way to play golf here into that series. Overall though, the game is massive and so hard to put down once you start. I have fond memories with this one, and even when it re-released on the 3DS Virtual Console, I got hooked into it all over again. I really wish Nintendo would revisit this series again. Number 6. Spider-Man. Man, did I love Spider-Man growing up. Hell, I still do. Between the superb 90s animated series, the Sam Raimi films, and even the lesser discussed 2003 animated series on MTV, Spider-Man has always been my favorite superhero of all time. Now, as for the games, Spider-Man has had a fairly successful run at great games for the most part. For this Game Boy Color installment, I have to say, this truly exceeded my expectations. From the moment it boots up, it has this cinematic presentation that grabs your attention right away, and how it transitions to the title screen here, I mean, just look how badass this is. Spider-Man on the Game Boy Color was an action game with some RPG-like elements for leveling up that add some complexity into the mix. Leveling up and finding the game's hidden power-ups are essential to completing this game, as it does not hold back at all in terms of difficulty. Now, this is a game that does have its share of issues like unfair hit detection and a lack of a proper map, but there's no denying that this is an ambitious game for the Game Boy Color. The story alone is fantastic, and it reminds me of the NES Ninja Gaiden games in terms of presentation. Gameplay is very engaging, and the music does a fantastic job of keeping you immersed. There's even a fun hidden Super Mario Bros. 1 Easter egg to be found here. I've replayed this game countless times since I got it over 20 years ago, and I still always find myself replaying it all these years later. It's that engaging. Number 5. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening DX. The Legend of Zelda series is easily a much beloved series for me, and while I haven't completed every installment to date, I owe it to Ocarina of Time for making me the fan that I am. When The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening released on the original Game Boy, it blew fans' minds as it was much closer to A Link to the Past on the SNES than it was to the original 2 on the NES. When the DX version came out though, taking that experience and bringing in excellent use of color really made this game pop. Link's Awakening is such a sublime experience, and to this day, it still impresses me that they were able to make such a high caliber experience for the handheld. I even like the variety this game includes, like fishing, crane games, and even 2D platforming sequences. Everything about this game is just fantastic, and was the first 2D Zelda experience I ever beat back in the day. While later in the GBC's lifecycle we received the superb Capcom-developed Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, Link's Awakening goes down as one of the most unforgettable Zelda experiences for me personally. Number 4. Mega Man Extreme. So, I never grew up with an SNES in my house. However, one game that I loved playing at my friends' houses was Mega Man X. The absolute perfect evolution of the Mega Man formula, Mega Man X does precisely what the series needed. Faster gameplay, tighter controls, and more badass music than ever before. In 2001, Capcom reimagined Mega Man X1 and 2 onto the Game Boy Color with their very unique way of telling the story of both games. When I heard this was coming out, I was beyond stoked, and man did it live up to my expectations. Taking everything from the SNES and scaling it back onto the Game Boy Color worked brilliantly. The animations were on point, the soundtrack had fantastic 8-bit renditions that truly stood out, and the gameplay was as responsive as ever. There was even an autosave feature that had checkpoints littered throughout levels, so if you needed to shut off the game, you can do so without losing much progress at all. There was even an auto charge and rapid fire option, which I felt worked very well, and it didn't detract from the challenge of the gameplay itself. I've replayed this game countless times, and to this day is one of the finest handheld Mega Man experiences to date. Number 3. Bionic Commando Elite Forces. Back on the NES, Capcom made a game that broke the convention of a game where you couldn't jump, but instead relied strictly on a grappling hook. Bionic Commando was a game that won the hearts of many gamers back in the day, and rightfully so. In the year 2000, Nintendo Software Technology developed their first title, Bionic Commando Elite Forces, exclusively for the Game Boy Color. This game took everything that worked perfectly in the original and added more. You now have the choice between a male and a female character, each with different traits. Additionally, there are now sniper sequences that's a nice addition. The fact that blood squirted out here when you shot them surprised the hell out of 11-year-old me. Level design overall is excellent here, and even the top-down levels return here from the NES original. Great visuals, soundtrack, and gameplay all make Bionic Commando Elite Forces a very worthy sequel to the NES original. Number 2. Metal Gear Solid. In 1997, Metal Gear Solid released on the PlayStation 1 to much critical acclaim. Solid Snake became an icon in the gaming industry and cemented a substantial series of titles from creator Hideo Kojima. In 2000, the Game Boy Color got an exclusive installment under the same name, also known as Metal Gear Ghost Babel overseas, but with a different story altogether. Metal Gear Solid has us return into the shoes of Solid Snake as he tries to stop Metal Gear from being launched from another separatist group 7 years after the events of Outer Heaven. Translating the gameplay from the 3D PS1 Classic to the 8-bit 2D Game Boy Color is handled flawlessly here, where there's a level structure now in place, but all the core components are still intact here. Lengthy cutscenes and codec sequences are still here, with an excellent story overall. The gameplay still focuses on stealth, where you can hug walls, tap on them to get guards' attention, hide underwater, and much more. The radar works much like the PS1 original, just without the cone of view. The controls are spot on and utilize every button so well. From the moment it starts, this will be a very hard game to put down. Not to mention the additional VR training missions that are brought back here, and that you can replay any stage in the game, and you've got the core Metal Gear Solid experience in an 8-bit form, and it transitions masterfully. It's just a shame that Kojima considers this to be non-canon. Number 1. Pokemon Yellow Special Pikachu Edition. And for the number 1 top spot, Pokemon Yellow version. Now, this game was the reason I wanted a Game Boy Color more than ever, so getting this on Christmas of 1999 with my Game Boy Color was amazing to say the least. Now, if you've followed my channel, you'll know that I've mentioned that JRPGs are not really my strongest suit, but Pokemon Fever hit hard back then, and this game did not disappoint. Venturing through the Kanto region, there was this insanely addictive hook to capturing Pokemon, all 151 of them. Obviously, you needed other versions of the game to get all of the Pokemon, but gotta catch them all, right? Seriously though, Pokemon Yellow was this brilliant game in which it added some nice additions from Blue and Red versions. Aside from adding an actual color palette to take advantage of the GBC hardware, there was also a surfing minigame with Pikachu that was a fun addition. In some ways, this was actually a harder version of the original game, as starting with Pikachu kind of put you at a disadvantage against Brock, the first gym leader, due to him being a rock-type trainer, and Pikachu not really being able to strike any weaknesses here. Anyway, Pokemon Yellow really was this stunning experience that was easy to sink countless hours into until your AA batteries were dying. The amount of hours I've put into this game were insane, and I've replayed it again on the 3DS Virtual Console, and I couldn't put it down again even during that playthrough. Unfortunately, while capturing footage off of the original cart here, my original save data did get deleted due to the battery in the cart going on me. But that's okay, it gives me another reason to replay this masterpiece. The Game Boy Color had a plethora of games without question, and compiling this top 10 list was a bit more challenging than I expected. But in the end, I really thought about which games had the biggest impact for me on that handheld back then. So, Did you play any of these games? Which are your favorites? Sound off in the comments below, as I always look forward to hearing your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you all in the next episode.